YouTube, what's going on today, guys? Welcome back to the Coinist channel. Hit the subscribe button if you're new. We have charts, strategy, trades, all that stuff. If you trade coins, you're in the right spot. Today, what I want to talk about is Bitcoin having its biggest sell-off for the entire month. There's nothing I can do about it. It's happening. You have to weather the storm. I want to look at this move now that we're down around 10.4 thousand, when last week we were crossing 11,000 and things look quite good. We're going to look at the chart, so stick around for the video. But today I want to look at how many times Bitcoin can drop 20% during bull runs. Salsa Tequila, a trader I've had on the podcast, had a really good chart breaking down how many times Bitcoin gives those 20% dips. Believe it or not, it happens a lot during bull runs. So I want to look at this drop, try to determine if this is just another one of those 20% pullbacks before we continue, and then also think what could be causing this drop. Because I made a video a little bit ago looking at the dollar being an inverse chart of Bitcoin and how you can use that to determine Bitcoin's direction. So we're going to look at this drop, look at the 20% drops to understand if this is just a retracement in a bigger bull run. We're also going to look at the dollar correlation, how that can help you find out what Bitcoin does next. And then towards the end, I'm going to talk about a trading strategy that simplifies your decisions. And if you're an investor, you have to be thinking about this. So stick around. I think you guys are going to enjoy this video. But first, let's take a look at the chart today. Now, if you zoom in, yes, we've dropped almost $600, $700 today. We've bounced slightly. We're sitting right around 10.4 thousand. And in the grand scheme of things, that's not a massive drop for Bitcoin. It has tons of 5% intraday swings. This happens all the time, but every single time it does happen, it does kind of make you think. It's a gut check, right? We had one larger drop, and that was to start September. It's when we dropped below 11K for that first time since crossing above, and we moved all the way down to the lower 10Ks, where we found support. And now for the past couple weeks, I think it's lulled some people, including myself, back into bullishness and saying this thing's ready to resume, this thing's ready for new highs. If you looked at the sentiment across the market last week, I think everyone was pretty optimistic, right? Bitcoin and crypto markets broadly were recovering. A couple of things I want to put into perspective. If you look at Bitcoin since that March crash, and this is when nearly every single asset crashed, right? We had stocks doing poorly. This massive sell-off where Bitcoin moved almost all the way down to 3K or 4K was right around that Corona outbreak. This was peak fear for all assets. It was a rush for the exits for all assets. All risky assets did poorly because people wanted cash. And the recovery's been swift. But I think things really took off towards the end of July. This is when I think the bull market got real for everyone. We moved above 10K swiftly. We moved above it quite violently, right? And now we've found so far a local high or a local top of this current bull run around 12K. So now that we have a lay of the land, this is how I kind of want to break down the chart. This is personally what I'm looking at. Obviously, it's not advice, but just a really quick analysis of where the current support is and where I think the strongest resistance is as well. We have our 12K top. I'm just going to mark that here with a little white line. I put the support down here where Bitcoin found support around 10K, and that was a week or two ago, right? As sellers moved into this level, you can see wicks or demand stepping in before we rise back to the 11s. On prices dip today, we have not gone down to retest this level, but if we do, I do expect this to be a strong support, right? Whenever there's this pool of wicks right here, that's price or sellers pushing it down, buyers being strong enough to force us back above support, all the closes happening above 10K, that's a sign of support, right? Obviously, if we break that, that's kind of the next big warning sign, right? If we actually have a break and a close below, then yes, I'd be looking for more downside. Something like the high 8Ks would kind of be the next level. But first, this is going to act as support, right? This is our current support for now. If I'm looking at current resistances, the level that I think stopped us is right around here, this block, right? This is where price on its ridiculous rise above 10K, I know we eventually made it to 12K, but this is the first area that Bitcoin actually saw some resistance and stopped going, straight parabolic or straight vertical. And it looks like that's also the level that's caused resistance for the past few days, right? So if I'm saying current resistance or immediate resistance for Bitcoin right now, that is at 11K, right? That's where we got smacked down. And our current support right now is around 10K. So this is the range that I would expect us to trade in until the end of the month, right? Very short term, that's what I'm looking at as support. Buyers are stepping in right below 10K so far, right? And it looks like sellers so far are defending 11K. A break above either of these, right? If we break above this, I would expect a violent break higher. If we break below this and close below, right, I would expect a much more severe breakdown. And some people think about that and they look and they say, well, that's quite obvious, right? If we go above this level, we're obviously going to go higher. If we go below this level, but I think it's important to mark out the resistance and support, because when a candle close happens above or below a key level, it can signal that we're done kind of playing in a range or playing in a consolidation, and that a more violent move is ready. And that'd either be a close above the 11.2 or a close down below the 10K, right? I think it is important to mark those, and sometimes TA does come down to a quite simple analysis like that. It gives you an understanding of when to expect a more violent move versus when to expect we're going to continue to be range bound. But that's just a quick breakdown of what's happening today. I want to put this into context of what the previous bull runs have looked like when we've had 20% drops, because right now from Bitcoin's peak, we're down almost 20%, right? Call it 17%. I would say that's close enough to 20%. It's actually happened a lot, not only in this bull run, but in previous bull runs. And I think it's going to give us a hint of how this plays out going forward. So let's take a look at that chart. All right, so this chart is from Salsa Tequila. Like I said, he's been on the podcast. You can watch that video over here. It's above my head, or the link is down in the description. He's the trader that made almost $100,000 on a $1,000 or $2,000 deposit in the Bybit trading competition. So whenever he speaks, I like to listen. So check out this chart of the previous 20% drops during the 2017 bull run. This is the bull run that was insane. And people remember price running from 1K all the way up to 20K, a 20x return for Bitcoin. But look at how many times it dropped 20% during that time period. So I'm going to start this chart off with a very zoomed out view. And back here on my left, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see the actual dates and the numbers. But this is early 2017. This is obviously the peak Bitcoin. This is 20K. This is the beginning of 2018. So this time period that you're seeing that we're going to look at is a 12-month time period, right? A full bull cycle. And zooming in and looking at this, right, that first drop in 2017, this was when price around $1,000, maybe slightly higher. That first drop 40% before continuing higher, finding a new high, 30% before continuing higher and finding a new high again sometime around mid-year. Another new high followed by a 40% drop. So these aren't even 20% drops. These are 40% drops in a period of 6 months where we're continually finding new highs. Now the return's been about 5 or 6x. After this 40% drop, this is somewhere around October of 2017, price continues to move higher, finding new highs, another 30% drop right here in November, December, before it really takes off and finds those highs that everyone remembers, the all-time high for Bitcoin, right? So in a span of 1 year where we have a full bull cycle, there were 4 times where price dropped way more than 20% and actually dropped about 30 or 40%. Right, so something to keep in mind, if we are in a full-blown bull cycle that lasts longer than a year, right, we're going to have periods where price can correct 20 or 30% and then continue to find new highs. So the reason I'm showing you that chart and looking at that analysis is because the current drop could be another one of those drops. The most important thing is having context to it. If we continue to find higher highs and higher lows consecutively after this drop, that's what matters most, especially if this bull run lasts a full year. You can think about the low starting in March. So if it's a full year bull run like we had in 2017 and partially in 2019, that could last a full year. That's going to be first quarter of 2021. We're going to have periods of time where price shakes out traders for 30 or 40%, but for the longer term investors, you have to put context to it. And if we continually find new highs after that, that's what matters, and you should still be holding on to your Bitcoin. The tough part about all this is you don't get that context until after the drop happens. So for people trying to get a beat or a read on what happens next, I've been using the dollar chart. I made a video about this last week. It was really well received. I think traders are going to like this. That video is down below, but I'm going to take a look at what's been happening right now and how the dollar rising is actually probably causing this sell-off. Check this out. As I said before, I explained this relationship in full. If you guys want to see that video, it's in the description. I'm going to go over it pretty quick here. But basically, the dollar has been acting as an inverse chart for Bitcoin, and sometimes it's been leading the action, so it can give you a read on what happens next. If you look at Bitcoin finding its high right at the end of August or beginning of September, that high was around 12K. Everyone's familiar with that. That's been the high so far of the bull run. Now, the dollar actually also found its low right there on September 1st. Now, this is the dollar weighted against a basket of other currencies, so how strong the dollar is broadly. As Bitcoin's been dropping, right, the dollar chart has been rising, or dollar strength has been rising, and it happened again today almost perfectly. This drop, or one of the largest drops since September started, this 5 or 6% drop today, perfectly lines up with the dollar seeing serious strength today, right? One of its best days since September started. So if you're looking for a chart that adds confluence to an idea, I would not use this solely. But if you're looking at a chart and saying, ooh, it looks like Bitcoin's at support, okay, the dollar is also dropping and finding new lows, that would add conviction to a trade. I would not use this solely and say the dollar is rising, that means Bitcoin has to keep dropping. But as of recently, Bitcoin is trading in line with gold, and that means it's inverse of the dollar, right? You can use these charts together with your ideas. I would not use them solely. It's just one tool you can add to your arsenal to try to get a read on what happens next if you don't want to wait until after to find that macro context. All right, so in this video, we've covered a lot of ground. The current Bitcoin sell-off today, that 5 or 6% drop, also looking at the previous 20% drops, and now finally, what probably caused this drop? I do think the dollar played a large role. The important thing is these correlations fall apart, right? Bitcoin's an uncorrelated asset. It has different things driving it, and it's probably in a long-term bull cycle. You can think about it as being very undervalued on a 10-year time horizon, but sometimes it can still be kind of expensive on a month-to-month basis. We're going to see drops, and it can still be a great investment for the long term. Now, lastly, what's the strategy to play this? For most investors, it's a buy and hold. Right? If you think it's undervalued on that 10-year time horizon, the best thing to do is to simply ignore these price drops and not try to become a trader when they're happening. That's probably the only way you can really mess up here is if you try to be making those moves when you're not paying attention to the market 10, 12 hours a day, you're just not going to stand a chance. If you're a trader, you have to be looking at these short-term correlations and looking at these swings because that's also where you make your money. So if you're a trader, stick to that, look at the swings, and try to play those 10 or 20% moves. If you're an investor, it's probably best to ignore them, right? Watch the video, understand we're in a long-term 10-year bull cycle, and that's all you have to do. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button down below. I'm going to be making a lot more of these. We also have some good podcasts on the way. Check those out. You can listen on iTunes and Spotify. And before you go, I have one more thing for you. The best place to buy Bitcoin is on the crypto.com app. Hit the link down in the description right below. It's free to get on your phone. I think it's the best crypto phone app, and they let you DCA into Bitcoin so you can have recurring purchases. It's one of the best ways to get exposure. Really simple to get set up. You can buy with a credit card or your bank account right there on the crypto.com app. They sponsor these videos so that I can bring you guys the best info. That's all I got. I'll see you on the next video.